skinned, or, as one editorial put it, we relish making derogatory remarks about the opposition. So let me just start by saying I'm extremely pleased that this year the PPP will be celebrating 75 years since it was established. And any student of history can read the records and understand the facts since our formation. So the party was established primarily to fight for independence, to bring our people together on the platform of national unity across race, religion, and class. It had a progressive platform of trying to improve the welfare of all Guyanese, particularly the working people of this country. And it fought for equal rights and the end of discrimination against Guyanese of every race and religion. And there was a lot of discrimination in that period. When the PPP was formed, we did not have universal adult suffrage. Not everyone could have voted in the elections to choose their leaders. To vote, you had to either be literate or own property. The PPP fought and got that changed. A lot of Guyanese were excluded from many institutions, colonial institutions, on the basis of their religion. If you were Hindu or Muslim, it was difficult to secure a job in the civil service. You had to convert to Christianity. The PPP fought to end that. We fought to end the lack of rights and programs to educate our people. In the colonial era, I'm not going to go through, the students of history will go through the details of this, but there were reports that concluded, these reports were commissioned by the colonial rulers, that rural people particularly did not value education. So the implication was that they did not need to build schools and other institutions of learning in rural communities. It was a kind of institutionalized discrimination. And so the PPP played a very important role in that struggle for freedom in Guyana. As I said before, I'm not going to focus on all the details of that struggle. Just to say to particularly young people who may not be so familiar with our history, that of the 75 years since the formation of the People's Progressive Party, 16 years were spent in the fight for independence, in which many of our people were jailed and suffered severe brutality at the hands of the colonial rulers. But the PPP and its members can be very proud of our record for fighting for independence and for freedom for our country. And then another 28 years was spent again fighting for free and fair elections, because immediately after independence, we had 28 years of undemocratic rule. So even before we got to the return of democracy to Guyana in 1992, we had already spent 44 of the 75 years fighting just for freedom in our track record. And I'm not going to again chronicle all that we did in the 28 years to fight for free and fair elections, because that could be easily researched. But again, people lost their lives. Last week I spoke of ballot box polling agents and counting agents who were shot dead by members of the army who were stealing the ballot boxes on the instruction of the PNC government. I spoke about the killing of people, the assassination, the political assassination of Walter Rodney and Father Dark. That period was characterized, marred by severe repression and brutality by the PNC. And so 44 years of the 75 years had passed before the PPP came into office through free and fair elections. What happened in those years is very important too, because our country moved from the limited progress we made in the colonial period under internal self-rule. Because you would recognize that the British, even after we won the elections, they suspended the Constitution. They were not happy with the progressive agenda of the PPP in the period when we had internal self-rule. That was before independence. And they suspended the Constitution. But even with the limited powers that the PPP had in the period that it formed the government in the colonial era, and the powers were limited at that time, progress was made in the economy. If you examine the growth in the economy in that period, and you look at some key things that we enjoy today that many young people may not know were started by the People's Progressive Party. The Guyana School of Agriculture, the University of Guyana, the Blackbush Polder Scheme. I can give you a long list of very important institutions and projects that were started under the PPP in the period when it had limited power in the colonial era. So we've always, in the periods that we've had government, you would see that the country has moved forward. Guyana was considered in the 60s the Singapore of the Caribbean. We had multiple exports of a whole range of agricultural products, etc. So after the 28 years of the PNC dictatorship, we came from a middle-income country to one of the poorest countries in the world by 1992. lower than Haiti, per capita income lower than Haiti, with a destroyed economy and one of the most heavily indebted in the world, bankrupt practically. So when we tell the story of the PPP, there is also a national story to be told. And that story is about the bad governance and the misrule of another party that had emerged from the People's Progressive Party, because when Burnham led the split of the PPP in 1955, he then created the People's National Congress. But that's the counterpart of the PPP story, the other side. The other side is 28 years of misrule. And in the colonial period, if you look at what happened in that period, and you examine the source records now, the documents from that period that are being released by the CIA and the British Secret Service and from the State Department in the United States of America, you will see that there were many local agents